Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, back again with Doctor Who. Last time on Doctor Who, we had the Night of the Doctor. What all happened in that one?
Well, it was a very short night.
Yeah.
The Doctor is trying to rescue some woman in space who refuses to be rescued because she finds out he's a Time Lord. They crash land on Karn?
Yes. Karn.
The planet, and the sisterhood there, who are somewhat like the witches in Macbeth, essentially tell him he's already dead, but they're offering him a chance to participate or to finish the time war with the Daleks, and he drinks the potion and turns into John Hurt.
Pretty much, yeah. That's
literally everything in the entire episode.
Yep.
All, 10 minutes of it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I told you it was a mini-sode. That's just what they do. Probably one of the most important mini-sodes they've had.
Yeah.
Normally it's just like, oh, here's an extra scene or something that, we couldn't fit into the episode. And here it's like, no, this is very, very important to understanding everything. So yeah, it was interesting. It's the second time, and it's the second time that we've seen the 8th Doctor on screen, because he's only in this and the TV movie. So yeah, today we will be moving on to The Day of the Doctor, the 50th anniversary, which originally premiered November 23rd, 2013. So, that's the thing, we're honestly getting close to the 60th anniversary, so that will be interesting to see what they do for that one. So, let's see. Once again, we can say that this Wednesday we will be watching the 5-ish Doctors reboot, whatever that is, and next Monday we will be doing an adventure in space and time. And let's see, I actually can give you some context on this one. This time around, we are following the 11th Doctor once again, which is Matt Smith, and his companion, Clara Oswald, not Amy and Rory.
Okay.
Yeah. So, new companion. There's not too much I think I need to tell you about her. Yeah, I think it's good. She's just his current companion. And, I guess that's pretty much it. Everything else I can kind of fill in as we go along.
Okay.
So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much that. We might as well head right into the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who. Here we go.
The original.
There was a call for you at the office from your doctor.
Did he leave an address?
Clara's a school teacher. She used to be a nanny, but she's not anymore. I don't understand that, but whatever. That's a great shot.
Whoa, we're taking off, but the engines aren't going.
We found the TARDIS in a field. I'm having it brought in.
No kidding!
It's the simple things you can do with that police box that are funny. That's funny.
Is that Trafalgar Square? Been there.
Oh, there's a name I edited out.
Edited out some names, have we?
Yeah. There's another. And John Hurt, but you knew that.
Yes.
See, I didn't get that. I had to look away during that part.
Stewart, a word to the wise, and I'm sure your father would have told you, I don't like being picked up.
That probably sounded better in his head.
I'm acting on instructions direct from the throne. Sealed orders from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth I.
First. Okay.
First.
Nice scarf.
What's our cover story for this?
Time Lord art. Bigger on the inside, a slice of real time.
They make everything bigger on the inside.
Outstanding production for TV.
Yeah. This makes you wonder how the Doctor ever defeats the Daleks on his own.
Well, they're so predictable.
Yeah. And I guess they don't often employ these Dalek TIE fighters.
Yikes.
He is done with them. this.
The moment is
Much
come.
lighter weight version of the
What is the moment? I've never heard.
Nail.
shoulder piece.
And we've never used it. How do you use a weapon of ultimate mass destruction when it can stand in judgment on you?
Man, everything keeps growing sentience.
Today, you leave me no choice. Today, this war will end. No more.
Makes you wonder how long he was in the war. If he was young when he regenerated.
Now, is he still on Gallifrey?
I don't know. I would imagine not, because Gallifrey's being bombarded by the Daleks.
Hello? Somebody there?
It's
Although
nothing.
the barn
It's just all...
Don't sit on that.
primitive, there's tires and modern day machinery.
Well, you recognize her?
Didn't you want to
Vaguely.
see it?
It's Rose.
Oh.
I chose this face and form especially for you. It's from your past. Possibly your future. I always get those two mixed up.
I don't have a future.
She's a lot like the TARDIS.
In this capacity, I have appointed you as Curator of the Undergallery. Godspeed, gentle husband.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Another life.
So Elizabeth was very young in 1562.
And ding.
What's that?
Is a machine that goes ding. Made himself. Lights up in the presence of shapeshifted DNA and a nice horse. It was the horse. I'm gonna be king.
What's happening?
You're being attacked by shapeshifters.
And I need you alive for our wedding day.
Notice his hair is not poofy. Sorry, had to put that in.
I knew you would say that.
Virgin Queen, so much for history.
He apparently had to grow it long for another show, so they just left it like that.
Whatever you've got planned, forget it. I'm the Doctor. I'm the
That rabbit's a killer!
I'm from the planet Gallifrey. Oi, you! Are you science, eh?
Oh,
The one with the Easter egg.
yes.
Got a name?
Yes.
Good, I've always wanted to meet someone called Yes. Now, I want this stone dust analysed. And I want
How's
a
the Easter egg,
report
the
in
scarf?
sync of
Yeah,
lots of graphs,
that Tom Baker's scarf.
diagrams, and complicated
At
sums
least similar.
on my
Yeah.
desk tomorrow morning, ASAP. Pronto. LOL. See? Job. Do I have a desk?
No.
And I want a desk.
Get a team. Analyze the stone dust.
It'd be great if they still had his lab.
Inhaler.
The running joke with UNIT is that they're all fanboys of the Doctor.
Wait.
Compensating? For what? Regeneration, it's a lottery.
He's cool.
Oh,
Come back,
Welcome. Welcome. I need you to send me one of my father's incident files. Codenamed Chroma. 70s or 80s, depending on the date of the photo.
Yeah, they would have a file on if the Doctor meets himself.
I'm looking for the Doctor.
Well, you've certainly come to the right place.
Good, right. Well, who are you boys? Oh, of course. Are you his companions?
It's the easiest way to confirm.
Really? Yeah. Really? You're me? Both of you?
Yup.
Even that one?
Yes!
You're my future selves.
Yes!
Am I having a midlife crisis? The pointing again. They're screwdrivers. What are you going to do? Assemble a cabinet at them?
Brilliant. Love the tower. Breakfast at 8, please. Will there be Wi-Fi?
Are you capable of speaking without flapping your hands about?
Yes. No. I demand to be incarcerated in the tower immediately with my co-conspirators, Sandshoes and Grandad.
Grandad?
They're not Sandshoes.
Yes, they are.
Silence. The tower is not to be taken lightly. Very few emerge again.
Dear God, that man's clever. Come on. Where are we going? My office, otherwise known as the Tower of London.
See, this is the kind of humor that helps these serious situations.
Yeah. The Doctor has best chemistry with himself.
Yeah.
It is interesting that they specifically brought back the red gooey alien for this.
Well, I've never seen him before, but...
Well, no, I think this is their first appearance, but still, it's similar to the Three Doctors.
I really do get into character, don't I?
Ugh.
In theory, I can trigger an isolated sonic shift among the molecules, and the door should disintegrate.
You have to calculate the exact harmonic resonance of the entire structure down to a subatomic level. Even a sonic could take years.
It's the only time he could use that against wood.
What makes you so ashamed? Do you ever count how many children there were on Gallifrey that day?
I have absolutely no idea. 2.47 billion.
You did count.
You forgot. 400 years, is that all it takes?
The man who regrets. And the man who forgets. The moment is coming.
Sums up their personalities,
The
too.
moment is me. You have to decide.
Scanning the door and planting the calculation as a permanent subroutine in the software architecture. And if you really are me, with your sand shoes and your dicky bow, and that screwdriver is still mine.
Yeah, still going.
Calculation complete.
Same software, different face.
Are incredibly clever. How did you do that?
Was it locked?
Right.
3 of you in one cell, and none of you thought to try the door.
Should have been locked.
Yes, exactly. Why wasn't it locked?
Because I was fascinated to see what he would do upon escaping. I understand you're rather fond of this world. It's time I think you saw what's going to happen to it.
So 400 years that screwdriver was working. All of that wasted.
These Zygon creatures never even considered that it was me who survived rather than their own commander. The arrogance that typifies their kind. Zygons. Men. And you actually killed one of them. I may have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but at the time, so did the Zygon.
That's from her speech on the beach for the Spanish Armada.
I rely on your service.
They have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart of a king. And the King of England at that.
First, my love, you have a promise to keep.
Wow, that's really a subtle piece of writing there.
Is there a lot of this in the future?
It does start to happen, yeah.
Godspeed, my love.
I will be right back.
Must be a weird feeling to attend your own wedding 3 times.
Look, the round things. I love the round things. What are the round things? No idea.
Oh dear, the friction quadrifibrillator. Ha! There! Stabilize.
This is his current TARDIS set.
Redecorated. I don't like it.
Oh yeah, oh you never do. Listen, we're going to the National Gallery. The Zygons are underneath it.
No, Unit HQ, they followed us there in the Black Archive. Okay, so you've heard of that then?
You know, it's interesting. It's like, well, we got to keep the Black Archive a secret from the Doctor. All 3 of them did know, though. Now they are 3 of them.
Hello. I'm the Doctor. Sorry about the darling.
Also, they're showing off.
Kate Lethbridge Stewart. What in the name of sanity you do?
Wish they could have had a shot of the first 3 looking that cool.
Except no one in this room will be able to remember if they're human or Zygon.
Whoops! Daisy!
Cancel the detonation! Peace in our time.
Just gotta forget what side you're on.
Yes, but peace in our time is what Neville Chamberlain said before World War II started.
Nah.
How many worlds has his regret saved, do you think?
You're right. You're so much younger.
Then, all things considered, it's time I grew up. Great men are forged in fire. It is the privilege of lesser men to light the flame.
And it is done in the name of the many lives we are failing to save.
Needs of the many.
I have had 400 years to think about this. I changed my mind.
What? What don't they know?
This time there's 3 of us.
Oh! Frozen in an instant of time. Safe and hidden away. Exactly like a painting.
If none of the Time Lords were mad enough to think, let's use art to save us.
I started a very long time ago.
Calling the War Council of Gallifrey. This is the Doctor.
You might say I've been doing this all my lives.
The whole time. He's always been doing it.
Command all 12 of them. No, sir. But all 13.
Yeah. We haven't even gotten there yet.
Guards know that something is happening. They're increasing their firepower.
The Dalek's like, what the heck is happening? There's so many boxes.
And all three! Oh, for God's sake, Gallifrey, stand! I won't remember this, will I?
The time streams are out of sync. You can't retain it. No.
So I won't remember that I tried to save Gallifrey rather than burn it. I have to live with that. But for now, for this moment, I am the Doctor again.
So it doesn't rewrite the past 7 seasons we've had.
Of course, suppose it makes sense. Wearing a bit thin.
A little too old. You can just faintly see him become Eccleston.
I could retire and be the curator of this place.
You know, I really think you might.
I never forget a face.
I know you don't. And in years to come, you might find yourself revisiting a few, not just the old favorites.
If I were you... if I were you... perhaps I was you, of course.
Or perhaps you are me.
Or perhaps it doesn't matter either way. Who knows?
Who knows?
Kind of a don't overthink it, really.
Home. The long way round.
And that's it.
Now, one last little bit. I'm really surprised they missed it. Right there at the end. Because the girl who had the scarf earlier, if she had left it there, on his way out, he went, oh, nice little scarf. Just put it on, walked out with it. Wow, that's brilliant. I mean, that's just really good writing all the way around. And the special effects for television, again, seriously.
Yeah.
And this was, 7, 8 years ago? Now, how did they know, was this right at the end of Matt Smith's, so they already knew Capaldi was coming in?
Yes,
Okay.
this is... Now, I haven't quite seen Smith's Regeneration yet, but I believe it was around this time where Matt Smith decided, all right, that's good. I think I'm going to end, and then they would have cast Peter Capaldi and been like, hey, let's get a quick shot of him, a really close-up shot, and that's a great tease for the next Doctor, too.
Yeah.
And especially, too, because originally when they showed John Hurt at the end of the last episode, not in Night of the Doctor, but the last proper episode, there was a lot of confusion because they didn't say where he was. And so a lot of people thought, well, John Hurt's going to be the next Doctor. And it's like, that would have been interesting. He'd be pretty old for that. You know, it definitely works here because he's not, you know, running around doing all the normal stuff. So, yeah, that would have been interesting, but...
Yeah. And by the way, I saw a couple of weeks ago, somebody had fixed the scene where all 13 of the Doctors come in, you know, because we only see a line or two from each of them, but somebody had extended that scene and had managed to go back and pull bits out of all of the other Doctors and put them into those little circles so that it went all the way around. You got an extended like 30 seconds, 45 seconds from each one. So it was just a fan edit, but it was really very brilliant to see them all, you know, pushed it at the same time, and Gallifrey disappears when they did that. So again, just phenomenal, just outstanding. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was incredible. And so let's see. Of the 5 anniversaries we had the 3 Doctors, the 5 Doctors, Dimensions in Time, and then Scream of the Shalka, and then this. They'd say this one is
I would
pretty
say
good compared to the rest.
Compared to all the rest, but even standalone, it was outstanding.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how they did that shot there at the end with all of them. And I realized that, you know, obviously that I don't think that was Hartnell standing in the background as the first Doctor. But even if it was, even if they'd managed to somehow do that, just to see them all standing there in a row like that, that's just phenomenal. That's, you know, that's what it's all about, guys. Yeah. Just from the very first right up until now. And again, can't wait to see more David Tennant, more Matt Smith. I'd love to see Capaldi and Jodie Whittaker. I'm ready to see all of them.
Yep, and we will once we swing back around to Hartnell. Gonna take a while, but we will get through it all.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm gonna go through my old notes and see the notes I took originally, and let me see which ones we can talk about here. It's definitely interesting that this time around, how we bring multiple Doctors together is specifically the moment is what does it.
Yeah.
So it specifically like brings the 2 of them to the War Doctor, basically, or technically brings him to them, so that he can see what he becomes, basically. Which is interesting because, you know, in the 3 Doctors, it's you know, it's that while there's no other Time Lords they can spare, so that's why they bring in the first 2, and then in the 5 Doctors, I don't really remember why exactly he brought in... Well, I guess he brought in all 5 of them, technically, so that they could figure out the Tomb of Rassilon for him.
Yeah.
So I thought this one is probably the more interesting way to bring multiple Doctors together.
I thought one of the best bits of the writing in it, though, was the fact that they kept referring to... Matt Smith having been around for 400 years, and they kept going back to that and thinking, hey, wait a minute, you know, you guys did this, but I've had 400 years to think about that, and now it's coming to me that they brought that up like 3 or 4 different times about how, yes, John Hurt may have done this, but now that you've had 400 years to think about it, what if we were to do this instead? And that makes perfect sense. I mean, it was well written. The scratching on the wall to give the code to Clara to come back, and the whole, I mean, it's just, that was, again, when you're writing about time travel, that is fascinating to be able to, you know, you're here and yet you can back up to here to get back up to there, and it's just, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then that all coming to a head in the climax when it's like, well, we've had so long to think about this because we told the first Doctor about this, and he's been thinking throughout all of our entire lives to get to the 11th Doctor, so now we got it. We have all the calculations complete. We can do it. And then I guess technically also that, you know, he made sure everything worked, but then that also means that after he regenerates into Peter Capaldi, he also then comes back and has to do it another time just to be sure they cement it there. So yeah, let's see. And
I will say this, although the Zygons, I swear that's from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Maybe.
No, it's the Vogons. Sorry, the Vogons. But yeah, when I heard that, I went, "Whoa, that sounds so familiar." But again, much scarier face, and yes, they had the suckers all over their body.
Yeah.
But still, they weren't as laughable as the giant jelly bellies that we saw in the one thing. But that's the only quibble that I have with the entire thing, is that the Zygons didn't, to me, look menacing enough.
Yeah, but also the fact that it's kind of just like they're sort of the antagonists, but they're very much like not a big part of this. Like, yeah, okay, they have to figure this out to, like, it's this conflict that shows what the War Doctor becomes, how good he becomes, what he does, because how many lives can he save with his regret, basically. And so that's the thing, is it's actually just this normal average adventure that probably didn't need all three of them there, but it was just so that they could show the War Doctor what happens, basically. That maybe it is worth it to burn Gallifrey and the Daleks. I like the running joke that the 10th Doctor can never figure out that that's really Elizabeth I. So I thought that was funny, that both times it's like, no, that's her. There's something else is the Zygon, or he's just wrong.
Now, again, I thought the actress playing Elizabeth was great. She was, I certainly don't want to offend anybody but she was somewhat more robust than Elizabeth is normally painted during that time. Elizabeth is somewhat of a thin woman. I remember, and again, now a part of this is also I have to understand, late 60s, early 70s, Glenda Jackson, very famous actress, played the young Elizabeth, and all the way up to her death in 1603 in that Elizabeth series on PBS, and it was from BBC too. But, I just, that young woman, I just thought, wow, she doesn't look fragile at all. She looked like she could put on some armor and go, kick some Spanish Armada butt.
Yeah.
But, of course, that's 20 years before the Spanish Armada. But still, again, minor quibble, really hardly worth talking about. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Just me personally.
I do find it interesting that the Doctor would... Well, okay, I guess... a part of me was like, okay, well, why would the Doctor sort of be with Elizabeth I? This is Elizabeth that's, slicing people's heads off. And it's like, well, it's not that he really wanted to be in this relationship. It was because he was going after the Zygons. So,
it makes you wonder, is there something in David Tennant's tenure as the Doctor where he goes back and meets her?
Kind of. So, this is actually... The 10th Doctor at this point is between the Waters of Mars and when his final story where he regenerates. Because between those, he basically takes about 100 years to just sort of avoid his death. He's like, oh, well, I'm being called to die. I think I'll do that later. So he goes off for like 100 years, and he does say, he married the Virgin Queen, and he's like, well, that's not very accurate anymore. And there,
I just told that story to my Oklahoma history students. We were talking about the settlement of Jamestown and how the fort itself was named for the new king, but that the land, the colony of Virginia, was named after Elizabeth. And of course, the students go, huh? How do you get Virginia out of Elizabeth? I said, well, she was never married, never had any children. And of course, the joke around England was, she was untouched by man. And so when they landed in North America and saw this beautiful land that had never been touched by man, they just said, well, why don't we name it after our queen, and called it Virginia. And there's this long pause in my class. Usually about 10, 15 seconds later, I start hearing, oh, yeah, leave it there.
There you go.
It's the rudest joke in world history.
Yeah. There's actually an even earlier episode with David Tennant where it's actually an episode where he meets Shakespeare, and then at the end they're like, William, there's someone important here. It's the Queen. The Queen showed up to watch one of his plays, and the Doctor's like, oh, sweet, that's really great. The Queen is here, and she walks in and is like, you're the Doctor, and he's like, what? He's like, kill him, and they all start to attack him, and he's like, I don't know what I did to piss her off, and then he leaves. It's like, that's the magic of time travel. I'll do that later, apparently. And that's the thing, is that he never came back. He is, I guess he's technically the king, you know?
Well,
at least that's what he said.
Yes, but that's the whole basis for the invasion of the Spanish Armada. Prince Philip of Spain had married Elizabeth's older sister, Mary, and when she died, he assumed that made him the King of England. But although in the Spanish version of the marriage contract, that's what he had written in the English version of the contract, what Elizabeth basically said is, when you married my sister, you did not become the king, you became my sister's husband. And Philip said, well, according to Spanish law, I have the right to the crown. And she says, you want a piece of us, come get us. And that's precipitates the invasion in 1588. So again, I love telling that story. I've told it for 25 years now. I told it in all my world history classes. I tell it in my Oklahoma history class, because by defeating the Spanish Armada, that's when the British finally began sending colonists to the New World, with the Roanoke colony and then Jamestown and then the Pilgrims, the whole work. So anyway, and of course you and I have a unique connection to Jamestown, but we'll go into that some other time.
Yeah. I also just realized I like that this episode, it's primarily based around the present day with the Black Archive and UNIT and everything. But then we have to go back to the past to get the 10th Doctor, and then we have to go sort of to the future where the War Doctor is with the Time War. And I only just put it together that this does encapsulate Doctor Who. Sometimes we're in the present, sometimes we're in the past, sometimes we're in the future. And it's like, we got all three of those. And we never get all three of those in the same episode. Yeah. So I did like that.
Now, I'm assuming that Brigadier General Lethbridge Stewart, the actor, had passed on by this time.
Yes, it was about a year or so before this episode. But we did have his daughter, Kate Lethbridge Stewart, who they had her in an episode earlier this season, but it was only one episode, and they brought her back. She is now the head of UNIT, and she's going with science before military, although she is very, very much military in this as well. Yeah. What do you think of her?
Very good. She reminded me of Emma Thompson, Academy Award-winning actress, just facially and the way she carried herself. So, again, no problems with that. I liked her. Clara, and was it Rose, did you say?
Yes.
The blonde girl, yeah. That all worked very well. I mean, it just... and the Clara there at the end, I mean, just the perfect kind of acting where you can say so much without literally saying anything. Just the look on her face and the tears and everything. It's just, that's what motivates the three guys to go, we got to figure out a different way to do this.
Yeah.
So just again, all around, well done.
And I'm trying to figure out... Because, okay, the time that we're recording this... my reaction to this episode has not even gone to Patreon yet, so that's how far ahead we're recording, actually. So, I haven't quite figured out if in this episode, did they change their timeline, or did this always happen?
Well, my impression was that they had changed it and yet kept it the same.
Yes.
Because by making Gallifrey disappear and freezing it, that means that Gallifrey was still gone and all the people in it. And the Daleks ended up destroying themselves. So, although the outcome remained the same, how it happened is the only thing that changed.
Yes.
But the story is, Gallifrey is gone, the Daleks are gone.
Yes.
Let's just go on from there.
And with what the War Doctor says at the end, I won't remember any of this. I'm going to think that I destroyed Gallifrey, and I'm going to have to live with that. So that doesn't change... kind of the character arc for the Doctor with the following seasons when he would go into being Christopher Eccleston, because he does still think, I destroyed Gallifrey, and he has to live with that. That also leads into Dalek when he has so much regret about the war.
However, when John Hurt goes back to his TARDIS, he regenerates almost immediately. So he personally, even though he supposedly is going to forget about that he did not actually destroy Gallifrey. It seems to me that, that's that. I don't want to say it's redemption, but that's his he doesn't have a whole lot of time to even think about it, because he goes back into his TARDIS and suddenly he turns into Christopher Eccleston. Now, Eccleston will have, again, that vague echo of a memory, this is what I did, but John Hurt will not have, years and years and years and centuries or whatever he has to think, should I have done that? Should I have killed, 2.47 billion people?
Children.
Yeah.
That's just the children.
Yeah.
So, let's see. I initially wrote down the Fez. I thought that was a fun way. It's like, okay, yeah, the moment is opening these portals, but what's actually bringing them all through there? It's because the 11th Doctor threw a Fez in there, and it landed with Tennant, and then he jumped in, and then he threw it again, which landed with the War Doctor, so he jumped in. And I like that too, because like after this, intense scene showing the last day of the Time War, and trying to figure out, can the War Doctor do it, and it's like, and the moment opens up this time rift, and then just a Fez falls out, and she's just like, okay, I didn't see that coming. Why did a Fez just drop out of here?
Now, how much of Matt Smith have you watched? Because if I recall correctly, didn't he wear the Fez as the Doctor?
He sometimes wears a Fez. Yeah. Every so often. They always try to get rid of it too, because they think it looks stupid on him. It's like Clara even said, it's like, one day you're going to walk past a Fez and just walk, So sometimes he wears it, sometimes he doesn't. Yeah. Which is, the first time he wore it, he just like grabbed it. He was like in a panic. He just grabbed it and was like, okay, I have a Fez now. And he's like, and when they're questioning him later, I think it was Amy and Rory, they're like, why do you have a Fez? And he's like, oh, I have a Fez now. Fezes are cool. It's just what he says, which is also, he always says that about his bow tie. Because they always question his bow tie. It's like, why do you have that? And it's like, bow ties are cool. Yeah. So he just has that.
That's literally also one of the worst jokes ever about, and I guess you could apply it to the Doctor here. Somebody says, or the Doctor says, don't you know who I am? And the other person says, well, I don't remember your name, but your Fez is familiar. So, play on words.
Sorry. Let's see. I also wrote down the screwdriver. I do like, they do confirm, even though in the new series, we see his screwdriver destroyed all the time, but he constantly gets a new one.
I've never noticed it actually lights up before.
Oh yeah, they both do. This one used to have sound. The sound broke in a week after I got it.
Wow.
Yeah, this one has stayed pretty well. Actually, there's technically, there is a button, but there's no button. This button is just to open it. What you got to do to activate it is just touch it.
Wow.
Yeah. But this is the 11th Doctor's. This one, technically both the 9th and 10th Doctor had the same one.
Okay.
Have you,
No, every time we set this up, I just move it.
Yeah, I know.
Apparently, I have never touched it in a way that it activated before. Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right. So I like that they pretty much confirmed that every screwdriver is the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same software, which is how there's like, okay, so the War Doctor, he goes like, okay, I will start the calculations to disintegrate this door, and then by the time you get to Matt Smith and his screwdriver, it's like, oh, it's done. And it's like, okay, let's do it. And then Clara walks in anyway because the door's unlocked.
Nobody thought to open it.
All three of you, 400 years between the three of you, and none of you thought to just open the door. So that was funny. It would also have been interesting to see them disintegrate the door, because there is a running joke that the sonic screwdriver works on everything except wood. It's the one thing, and that's why he constantly gets crap for it, with his companions. It can't go through wood. At a point, that he meets wooden aliens, and he's just like, oh, this was always going to happen. So, let's see. The Doctor did say, the 11th Doctor said he is around 1,200 and something years old. And he said, well, I lose track, and most of the time I lie anyway, so I just kind of believe my lies. Because that is, a lot of people have said that none of the Doctor's ages match up, because he's apparently the 7th Doctor once said that he's over 1,000 years old, and then Christopher Eccleston says, well, I'm only 900. And it's like, well, which is it, So, but they do try to say at least that it's 400 years between the War Doctor and the 11th Doctor, which is interesting. And it's also interesting, the whole conversation they have about, did you count how many children there were? And the 11th Doctor is like, no, I don't know. I never counted. And then the 10th Doctor, being the younger one, is like, you did count because I counted. How could you not remember that? So, and it does sort of, I don't want to say drive a wedge between the 10th and the 11th, but it does show the difference between the two of them, that, the 10th Doctor is the man who regrets, while the 11th Doctor is the man who forgets, which does sort of sum up their personalities. Which you could also attribute to why the 11th Doctor, I guess, is kind of weirder than the others. Like he's, has the fez and the bow tie and stuff. He tries to act like he's not over 1,000 years old, basically. So, let's see. I like the 11th Doctor's line when they go into the 10th Doctor's TARDIS, like, oh, this is a grunge phase. Because that's the thing, is that, that's what the TARDIS looked like when Eccleston took over, and before that, it was always the white set, and then the 8th Doctor had, like, the Victorian library, basically. And it's like, when you really do stop and look at that, it's like, it is kind of gross looking. It's like there's coral everywhere, and it's like, why would you choose this? And then we see the 11th Doctor's TARDIS set being, like, completely, like, silver and metallic. Which I think I like that one a bit more. Let's see. I guess we could talk about the Curator at the end there. So, is that the Doctor? It's probably the Doctor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he does say, something about, I could be you or you could be me. So,
yeah.
I think the fact that Matt Smith says, if I retired, I could be a curator, and the guy says, well, yes, I am.
Yeah, and I didn't catch it, but in Elizabeth's letter, she wrote that she specifically, in case of an emergency, the Doctor is the curator of the Undergallery, which is interesting. So technically, yeah, he is the curator, and I like the idea that it's like, oh, he can revisit some faces, but he generally revisits the old favorites. That's why he took on Tom Baker's face again. Because it makes you wonder, it's like, okay, well, how do you use the same face again? Because regeneration is so tricky. That was the whole point of the Night of the Doctor, was that this is the first time he can choose what he becomes. So that's interesting. I just hope they never do it to where it's like, well, next season, he's just going to be Tennant again. And it's like, well, I wouldn't want to get into that, but...
Well, yeah. It is interesting, though, I'm sorry, I keep using the word interesting, as Alex said, we're trying to change that. But, yeah, I don't think any of them would come back permanently, but I'm, again, very glad that Tom Baker came back for this one, since he didn't come back for the 5 Doctors.
Yeah.
And... that again, that always makes for very interesting dialogue, makes for interesting plot points, to have all of them there. At some point, it would be nice if they could bring Eccleston back just for a short scene.
Yeah.
I understand there's a whole lot of other problems with having the showrunners, but I mean, aren't there new showrunners now? Surely they could figure out some way to bring him back.
From what I can tell, and people can correct me in the comments, pretty much whatever drove him out of the show originally, it's all it's calmed down, because that was 2005, and it's all calmed down. He just has no interest in returning to the role. Yeah. So I think he would be welcome back, even if it was just for something like one episode. So who knows? Maybe he could come back for the 60th in a few years. Yeah. And I find it interesting that he doesn't even come back for the audios. And there are audios of the Ninth Doctor. They just have someone else doing an impression, basically. So I would be curious how good those are. If it would have to be a pretty good impression, but I also know there are some audios. I think there are 4 audios of the War Doctor that were finished and released just before John Hurt died. So, I know there are other stuff. There's some with the Eighth Doctor and how, some things that he did in the Time War, even though he was trying to stay away from it. There's also, I believe, a series about the War Master, where I think it's Derek Jacobi who voices the Master in that one. And so it's how he was in the Time War and stuff. So those would be interesting to listen to. Maybe not on a, when we're specifically supposed to be on schedule. But let's see. And I do like the idea. So Gallifrey, I suppose it is trapped in that single moment. Like, it's not, because for a bit I was like, okay, is it just in another universe? But it's like, okay, it is, but it's stuck in that last moment of the Time War, basically.
Yeah, they're not aging. It's kind of the idea behind cryogenics, that if you're suffering from a disease that there is no cure for today, that if they can figure out some way to put you in stasis, that 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, 500 years, they would figure out how to cure that disease and then bring you back. So the fact is, they've left Gallifrey in that stasis moment, and at some point in the future, if they can figure out how, they'll bring Gallifrey back.
Yeah, which makes me curious, because, we have the shot at the end of him at Gallifrey with all of his past incarnations as well. And so it makes me wonder, it's like, okay, well, does that mean that, are we going to get Gallifrey back, or is it, still going to be sort of locked away? Because that has been the thing with New Doctor Who, is that there have been no other Time Lords. He is the last Time Lord. Are we going to suddenly change that now? But I have no idea. Yeah. And it is also interesting that, it's like, okay, it was locked away, and they did say, we don't know if this will actually work. It's not until the Curator says that it did that, tells him the title Gallifrey Falls No More. And he's like, oh, it did work. What we did, actually worked. But it's possible that, at least for the Doctor's life, it's at least 400 years before he's allowed to even retain the memory of this. It's only the 11th Doctor that can remember all this. So, I don't know. I'm not sure if, he found it, so are we going to get the Time Lords back or not? Because they've said before, there was actually an episode where it's like, there are some Time Lords that are trying to escape the Time War. And, he says, we can't really let them escape the Time War, because they are war Time Lords. They're not the kinds you want to bring back, which we even saw a bit in The Night of the Doctor, when Cass was saying, or the Eighth Doctor said, hey, at least I'm not a Dalek. And she says, who can tell the difference anymore? The Time Lords did get that bad. So, it would be interesting to see what they would do with that. Can they bring Gallifrey back or not? And I guess that's pretty much all I got. That is pretty much all I got. You got anything else?
No. When we're signing off, after we sign off here, I would like to see the rest of these credits here. That looks pretty interesting. So.
Yeah. So that is basically it. Let's see. Wednesday, we will be back for the Five-ish Doctors reboot. Again, whatever that is. And then next week, we have an Adventure in Space and Time, which will be the two of us. It will be very interesting to go back to that, especially going into that right before we get into the rest of the Hartnell era. And then, again, I will be listening to the 50th anniversary audio, because I'm letting him off the hook for that.
I have an anniversary to celebrate myself, so.
Yeah, we're actually recording these ahead of time, so we're going to record the Five-ish Doctors and Adventure tomorrow, actually. So yeah, and then after that, we're back to the Hartnell era, and we will just power through all of those. We never planned for this. No. I guess, like Doctor Who itself, we never planned for this. It just sort of kept going, and now we're doing this. So, but yeah,
all right.
We will see you guys back on those. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.